Senator, I think maybe there's a misunderstanding. We've obviously done this report a number of times, so I think picking 2018 as a window and characterising that as being the only moment in time where we have sought expertise on the GenCost report is probably not fair.
Well, I'm only quoting Mr Graham's work.
And that the fact that we've been able to go through this process 5 times, through different consultations, drawing on expertise from a wide range of experts, I think shows that we have an open mind about technologies.
Perhaps you could take on notice, because we have very limited time, what other times you've spoken to experts since 2018. It seems like the initial decision was based only on discussions with competitors to nuclear energy, and you could take on notice what other discussions you've had since then, including any discussions you've had with people who, you know, might actually know about the nuclear industry, because that doesn't seem to have happened there. Now, I've got very little time, so I'll have to move on. Could you take that on notice?
We can take that on notice.
We just wanted to turn to, also in GenCost, the issue of coal price assumptions. There's some information that has been, or that I've seen, that those assumptions, this is the fuel price assumptions, seem to be based off the inputs and assumptions into the ISP process. Is that correct?
Yes, we use the inputs and assumptions workbook that AMO publishes as the source. So
when I look at that document and the coal prices in the workbook that is publicly available, I should take a step back. Your price assumptions for fuel price for coal in 2023 seem to be at a low point of $4.30 per gigajoule and a high point of $11.30 per gigajoule. When I look then and see the table of prices, fuel prices at different power stations in the ISR, AEMO's assumptions, that $4.30, the low price, seems to be the average of the coal prices, whereas the $11.30, the high price, seems to be the maximum. Why have you chosen a minimum as a mean and used the maximum for the maximum? That doesn't seem to make any mathematical sense.
Yes, I can explain that, Senator. So there has been a change in the methodology that AMO use. I can't remember exactly when it occurred, but they've stopped publishing a coal price for new coal plants. And I suspect that's because they don't expect there will be any new coal plants. In the past, they did have a separate table which said this is the coal price that a new Greenfield coal plant could potentially get from the market. In the absence of that information, they still provide that for gas, but they don't provide that for coal anymore. In the absence of that information, all we can look at is the coal prices that current plants are receiving. Now, the problem with looking at coal prices for current plants is that their prices actually reflect maybe long-term contracts that they've been able to successfully go into before, for example, the latest coal price spike occurred. So some coal plants are sitting on a 10-year contract. They're not affected by the coal price spike that we experienced. But if you are a Greenfield coal plant who's coming in, you don't have an existing contract, you're going to face those higher prices. So that's why we have to take the high price.
It makes no sense to me. Even that explanation still makes no sense, because if you want to get a low point, like the lowest possible point, it makes no sense for me to take the mean of an existing range, especially a mean which some of those plants, like Araring in your model, are at high points due to the Ukraine war. But I'll put that aside. The methodology seems ridiculous. Mr Graham, I think you have, unfortunately, with all due respect, shown a high degree of ignorance there of how coal-fired power plants work. And let me hear you out. I mean, one of your plants in the model is Cogan Creek, in the AEMO's workbook. It has a fuel price of $1.57 gigajoule. It has a stranded mine. It has a pad right next to Cogan Creek, what was to be we could build another power plant. You could build another. In fact, the plan was to build another coal-fired power plant there. That coal can be accessed at exactly the same price today because it's cost. It's effectively the mine cost. So have you looked at the Cogan Creeks, the Millmerrons, who have stranded coal mines and can actually achieve the $1.50 a gigajoule price even with a new coal power station? Why haven't you factored that in?
Senator Canavan, the witnesses don't come here to be insulted. They come here to answer questions based on their expertise. You did say something insulting. Would you consider withdrawing?
Oh, look, I'm
it?
happy to withdraw. I was only,
Okay.
of course, commenting on the discussion about coal-fired power plants.
Okay.
But
If-
Mr. Graham,
if Mr.
why
Graham
haven't
can
you factored
answer the
in the
subsequent
fact
question.
that at stranded coal mines you can achieve fuel price costs of $1.50? In fact, the cost curve for coal mines in Australia, about 80% of them are below $2 a gigajoule. Now, some of them have to pay export prices, so it's above cost. But some of them don't, and new ones might not have to, especially if
Okay.
they'd entered into a long-term contract. Why hasn't that been factored in?
So we've had a long-standing approach that we only include Greenfield new projects in GenCost. There is a separate process that AMO has for extending coal plant at existing brownfield sites, but we're looking at new coal plants only.
So it's new coal-fired power and moving the Overton window of coalition thinking from experimental small nuclear reactors to big ones now. Which coastal Queensland states do you want to put these in?
Minister, I think the problem here...
Where's that all going to go?
The problem
Okay.
here is your government is relying heavily on this highly criticised work. And it is discredited, in my view, this work now. Totally
Can I-
discredited.
Experimental nuclear reactors.
CSIRO work
Can
has been criticised by
Up and
Can I
down the
just
coast.
manage? Okay, okay.
And it has now been revealed they're
Gentlemen.
making dodgy mathematical decisions
that
associated with
loosely?
their assumptions. They're relying on information about nuclear from the competitors of nuclear energy.
Okay.
Their whole process is conflicted and discredited now, and it should
It
not be
being-
used as a basis
it
for
being-
public policy.
Could I make a comment, please?
You can, Dr Hilton. Can I just do one thing before I call you, Dr Hilton, which is say that we've only got 7 minutes left. I'm going to give a few minutes to Senator Wish-Wilson, and we also have Senator Rennick in the room who has one question. That's where we're at, so we're going to be very brief. Shall I go to
Please go.
Senate?
Yep.
So have you concluded, Senator Canavan?